tips on controlling software spend. So software spend is a major budget line item for companies, and that's only going to increase in the future. And one of the things you need to think about is, why are you buying the software in the first place? Theoretically, you are almost always buying software at a workplace for the purpose of driving efficiencies, meaning you need less people to do the same amount of stuff at your business for your customers. So one of the big mistakes that companies make, and something we try and manage a lot, is make sure that we are actually getting the employee savings that are advertised. One of the things, and this is a huge mistake that's easy to make, is you sit there and you buy new piece of software X and you say, oh, well, this is going to save one employee over the course of the next year, and that'll save $55,000. So the fact that the software costs $40,000, well, that's actually a savings of $15,000. And the reason this often doesn't happen in practice is a concept, I believe it's called Parkinson's law, but I may be getting that wrong, that basically work expands to fill the space of time that's provided. And any worker that you have, if you give them a piece of software that reduces their time to do a project from 1 hour to 45 minutes, and they do that project 8 times a day, well, theoretically you could say that, okay, we've given them back 2 hours out of their day, and we could not have to add a new employee as we add on more customers to do that project, or a variety of other things. What often happens in practice, if it's not managed, is that employee just does the same projects in the same amount of time. It's just that they may review it longer. They may take breaks, whatever. But that's a reality of managing employees, is you have to actually make sure that you cut your budget to accommodate that new software efficiency. And you have to make sure you do that in future budget years as well. So you need to keep track of, okay, we bought this software under the understanding that it would reduce F number of employees, it'll provide this efficiency, we'll be able to remove this, and this, that'll save us this amount of dollars. And you have to be able to compare that year over year to make sure that you actually are getting those efficiencies. Okay. In addition, you need to make sure that your software provider is telling you all of the costs up front. And what happens a lot, especially with SaaS providers, is they will give you kind of a rosy picture of what you need and then come up with additional items later on. They'll say, well, you have more employees than we thought, so we got to add this charge, or you're driving more customers, so we got to add that charge. One thing that's important to remember is the incremental cost for them of providing additional software is very little. And you've got to push back on software providers constantly with that when they're being unfair. And there could be things where, hey, we didn't anticipate how many employees we'd have correctly, or we added a big job, so we are getting more employees. But costs should go down as you add more employees, more customers, more jobs, and it should go down pretty precipitously, because their incremental cost of providing the additional software to you is not that much more. If you're looking at an ERP or accounting software and you have 20 people in your accounting staff and that goes to 25, it doesn't cost them, 20% more to provide the service. It costs a lot less than that, and your per employee per month pricing should go down quickly as you add staff and as your company grows. So it's important to make sure that that's taken care of in the contract. It's also important to make sure that you think about having alternative providers who can provide you with services. So if you have multiple divisions, should all your divisions be using the same payroll software or payroll provider? Well, on one hand, maybe you get efficiencies from doing that. Like you get a discount, a 10% discount for having X number of employees being run through the payroll. But if you don't, maybe there's an advantage to having two providers providing the same thing, because you have those companies playing off each other and you're able to drive down pricing that way because you have two different vendors in the game. It theoretically is always going to be cheaper to have one vendor because they can provide you with volume discounts, whether that's a supply vendor, whether that's a software vendor, whatever. It should, in theory, in a perfect world, you should be getting economies of scale through that vendor. In reality, that often doesn't happen, and you have to think about price checking those vendors to make sure that they are, they are providing you with the best cost. I mean, we think about our customers all the time, how to drive down their cost and pass it along to them, because we don't want to get price checked. All of your vendors should, you should at least have that available for all your vendors, because there's nothing like competition to ensure that you're getting the best pricing. So I've gone off software into all vendors, but that especially applies at the software level. So those are some tips in reducing your software spend kind of over time.